All right, guys, go ahead and switch over to the NFL. The NFL and the Pro Football Hall of Fame announced the 52 players and 2 coaches that make up the 2010s All-Decade team. Tom Brady's among the 8 players who were unanimous selections. There's also a few guys that made both the 2000s team and this team. The list is chock full of Pro Bowlers, All-Pros, and champions of the past decade. So, Jay, are you sold on this list, or are there some snubs?
For the most part, I thought this was a pretty good list. I had to look long and hard to, really find some things that I didn't like, and I came with 3 different. I guess you can call them snubs. I don't think there was anything all that egregious in this list. I think I would say 90% of this is spot on. Then I guess the other 10% you could argue and nitpick. But that's what we're here for. Let me get to the nitpicking. I'm looking at that offensive line, and I look at a guy like Joe Staley, and no disrespect, but I look at Andrew Whitworth, a guy who's had a long and productive career. He's got 2 All-Pro selections, and Joe Staley, he does not have an All-Pro selection. So I would slide in Andrew Whitworth at the offensive tackle position. And then at center, Alex Mack, same thing can be said for him that I said for Joe Staley. But Jason Kelsey, to the latter part of this decade, has been fantastic. He's got 3 consecutive All-Pro selections. Alex Mack does not have one. So I would slide Jason Kelsey in as another center and remove Alex Mack. And then when I look at the linebacker position, one of the interesting thing is, and I know this could be something that we're looking at, Patrick Willis, he was one of the first guys to, go about the business of that early retirement. He retired at about the age of 29, I believe. So he only played 5 seasons in this decade. Now, he was highly productive. He made 4 Pro Bowls. He was a 3-time All-Pro. But I would like to see a little bit more. And I'm looking at his teammate, Navarro Bowman. He's a guy who played 8 years in this decade. And he had, what is it? Let me go to the notes, get this right. 4 All-Pro selections and 3 Pro Bowls. I don't know how you make more All-Pros and Pro Bowls, but he found a way to do it. Those are the 3 those are my 3 snubs. I got a bunch of other guys who you could perhaps some honorable mentions and some guys you could argue about. But those are the 3 that stand out, and I don't think any of those are clear cut. I think, if you want to leave Joe Staley and Alex Mack, I don't have a huge problem with that. I think those guys are deserving. They've had great careers. I will just highlight a couple more things. That quarterback position, I think Tom Brady's an absolute no-brainer. But it's just tough. You'd love to have an extra quarterback spot on here because, Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees. I mean, my Lord. Drew Brees, the all-time leader in, is it touchdowns and yards now? I believe it is. And he can't find a spot on this team. I guess one of the things we're looking at is Aaron Rodgers. He won his Super Bowl in 2010, and Drew Brees, his Super Bowl victory was not in this decade. Drew Brees also does not have an All-Pro selection in this decade, but he's made 9 Pro Bowls. So that's just one of those things that's tough. You'd love to see both of them on there. But if you're going to have only 2 spots, I guess it's one of those things that you got to do, and you got to leave Drew Brees off. Although he's got a great argument, I'll tell you that. And then we got seven unanimous selections, and among those, think about this: Aaron Donald, 6 out of 10 years. His career started in 2014. He's only been in the league 6 years. He made this all-decade team as a unanimous selection. Think about that. And then 5 out of those 6 years, he's been an All-Pro, and he's made the Pro Bowl every year. Absolutely incredible stuff from Aaron Donald. Those are my initial thoughts. Take a drink.
Oh, all right. So, as Jay, eloquently put it, he gave me a good lead in. But listen, Cody, you talked about the unanimous decisions. Jay briefly hit on them. I'd like to just give a shout out to these guys because we need to understand this is a roster of 52 gentlemen. You said 8 of them were unanimous players. I think it's 7 or 8, one of the 2.
7.
Either way,
7.
Okay. Either way, listen, this is a very, very prestigious award. The first one is Tom Brady at the quarterback position. He was unanimous. At the running back position, we had Adrian Peterson. He was voted in unanimous. At the guard, the offensive guard spot, we had Marshall Yonder. He was voted in unanimous. Then also in the offensive tackle spot, we had Joe Thomas. He was unanimous. And then let's roll over to the defense side of things, right? J.J. Watt, he was voted in unanimous. And then we had Aaron Donald, which Jay already mentioned. He was voted in unanimous. And then Von Miller, he was also voted unanimous. And then we had one specialist that was voted, which was Justin Tucker.
That's right.
He was
that's
voted
your
in
eighth.
unanimous.
That's
the
your
eighth guy.
Right.
So those 8 gentlemen was voted in unanimous. Kudos to them, you know. And I just want to make sure I give a shout out because I think when you're talking about a roster of elite players like this, it's very hard to get everybody to vote. I mean, you could put out something right now, and us 3 probably won't all vote on it. So when you sitting here with a bunch of media panel and all these other guys, and everybody hands go up in the air and say, "That dude he legit. He should be on there." I think that's very noticeable, and I just want to give a shout out on that. With that said, I have 10. I don't want to call them snubs. Let's just say 10 argument starters here. However you look at it, it doesn't matter to me because at the end of the day, the NFL going to roll out this product that they already rolled out, so they ain't changing anything. But I just want to throw it out there. Holla at your boy. So the first one I had was Drew Brees at the quarterback position. Jay already hit that up. I'm not mad that Aaron Rodgers got voted in. I'm not mad at all. It is what it is. Nitpick, take it however you want to take it, but the roster is the roster. The second was A.J. Green at wide receiver. Then I had Terrell Suggs, edge rusher. Andy Reid in the coach's position. Cameron Wake, edge rusher. Then I had DeMarcus Ware, edge rusher. As you see, I fell in love with those edge rushers. Then I had T.Y. Hilton at the wide receiver position. Dez Bryant at the wide receiver position. Jay already mentioned this name, Andrew Whitworth at the offensive tackle position. And then I rounded it out with Jason Witten as the tight end position. Now, I will repeat this one more time before I turn it over. I'm not saying that, hey, those guys deserve to be in over the other guys. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying in this type of business, you make conversation. Those guys could make a conversation to see why they wasn't in the final 52 for the decade team. But if it's up to me, and it can stay the way it is, I don't per se got a problem with it. Jaden hit you with the numbers. He didn't hit you with the facts. So if you take that for what it's worth. But those are just 10 names that was outside of the 52 that could have been inside of the 52. So I just wanted to throw those out there. Over to you, Cody.
Yeah, let me just hop back in and give the rest of my, I guess you can call them honorable mentions before we get to Cody.
Okay.
And you laid out quite a few of mine. The depth at linebacker in this decade, I think, is unbelievable. And I'll get to some of them, but just some guys that may or may not necessarily belong on this list, but just guys that, as I look back through this decade, were guys that really stood out to me. Jamal Charles at the running back position. For years and years, you talk about yards per carry, and this guy was good for 5 or 6 yards every single carry. He was just excellent for the Kansas City Chiefs, particularly at the beginning of this decade. A guy that's really showed us something that, you know, and it's crazy. This guy just got traded for a box of cookies, but he's absolutely, you can make a great argument for him. DeAndre Hopkins could very well be on this list had it not been for some great depth at this wide receiver
hold on,
position.
Jay. What brand cookies was it? Because you know the brand of the cookie kind of mattered too. You said a box of cookies. We talking Oreos. We talking
Off-brand. Just pick
Store brand?
Famous Amos, perhaps. You know, all them cookies. You know, the cookies that we had on the Mew. But I don't think Hopkins is on this team, but I do think he's honorable mention. But when I'm looking at Antonio Brown, Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, and Larry Fitzgerald, I like those guys. I think they're deserving to be ahead of him. But if you had a next guy that you would throw on this list, I'd probably go Hopkins. But AJ Green, I mean, he's another guy you got to remember. His career is kind of paralleled Julio Jones. Just he's had some injuries here recently. Another tackle that we've talked about recently, and I think last season when he didn't play, that really hurt him. I think if he plays last season, I'm talking about Trent Williams, I think he's a guy you could see that's on this list. He's made 7 Pro Bowls in 9 years, and if he plays last year, had an opportunity to make it 8 of 10. Travis Frederick, he's an honorable mention for me. He's another guy that's retired early, had the went through some things medically that caused him to miss the 2018 season. And then, some other linebackers that you didn't hit on, but I'll hit on them. Clay Matthews, he's an honorable mention for me. I got love for Thomas Davis. I think when you overcome 3 ACL surgeries and then wind up playing at an all-pro level and make 3 Pro Bowls alongside Luke Kuechly. I think that's something that's absolutely commendable. So I just want to mention him. And then a couple guys from the Kansas City Chiefs, Derek Johnson and Justin Houston, really productive careers. Justin Houston came very close to Michael Strahan's sack record one season. And then at the cornerback position, I think if I had to pick another corner, I'd go Aqib Talib. He's fallen off recently, but he was a great part of that 2015 Bronco defense that I mentioned. Had good stops at Tampa Bay and New England. And then at safety, Devin McCourty. He's just a name that comes to mind, and how just one of the stalwarts of that Patriots defense. He's a guy, Bill Belichick ships off guys from time to time. Devin McCourty, he seems to have withstood the test of time. He's even got his brother in there, Jason McCourty. It's unbelievable what he's been able to do. And then don't forget at the tight end position. I know I've been trashing him recently, but don't forget about Jimmy Graham and how great he was at the beginning of this decade. I don't think that's something we can short sell, particularly at the tight end position and what we're dealing with now. Well, you play fantasy football, you can't find a decent tight end these days. But it's neither here nor. And the coach, I want to get to the coach real quick, because I think Bill Belichick is absolutely you can't argue that one. He's going to be one of your 2 coaches. I think that second coach, and you listed one of them that I'm thinking of, Andy Reid. I think that second coach there's a lot of good candidates for that second one, and you're kind of splitting hairs. Pete Carroll's deserving, but Andy Reid, John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin, I think you can make all great arguments for each and every one of them.
Yeah, this list is, I think it's pretty good. This is definitely something that's not easy to do. You're talking about a lot of different people, a lot of different positions. Like Drink was saying, you've got people all over the place. Some people would look at some of these guys, say like Calvin Johnson, and say, yeah, well, he retired a couple years early, or, look at a guy that maybe didn't get started in 2012, 2013, and say, well, that doesn't qualify you. But, up and down the list, no one really jumps out as not deserving, obviously. Some of the ones that stood out, I was really glad to see Calais Campbell made the list. That guy, was awesome. He was here in Jacksonville, and more than I ever expected him to be, both on and off the field. Devin Hester is a guy that a lot of like younger listeners may not, remember how dangerous he was. But there was a time when you did not kick to Devin Hester. You would just kick it backwards if you had to make sure he couldn't get it, because that you were absolutely rolling some weighted dice whenever he caught it. But other than that, there's, as far as the snubs go, the only sort of player I would absolutely say, like, because what's hard about the snubs is you can say that, okay, there's other guys that are deserving, like say Drew Brees. Any one of us can make a case for Drew Brees, but it's hard to make a bona fide, hey, Drew Brees is better than Aaron Rodgers, right? And obviously you're not taking Brady off this list that is 9 Super Bowls or whatever. So, but you have to actually look at this list and go, okay, who can we take off to put on? I could pretty safely, I think, take off probably Cameron Jordan and replace him with Terrell Suggs. I think that Terrell Suggs through the decade, I mean, you're talking about a guy who just kept it going for Baltimore. He won a Super Bowl with Baltimore. And then by the way, he just won one with Kansas City. Now, he was more of a hired mercenary at this point. But the statistics that he has, I feel like the statistics are close. But then you add on what his accomplishments are with his Defensive Player of the Year and his Pro Bowls and the 2 Super Bowl rings. I could probably put him in for Cameron Jordan. But it's tough. There's a couple guys you could probably do that with. But overall, yeah, I think this list is solid. Ndamukong Suh is surprising because how fast he's become kind of a journeyman, but he's still doing the work. And maybe Xavier Rhodes at the cornerback position, possibly. But, again, this is about a guy that didn't really get going in 2012, 2013, and he's already kind of fell back off. So as far as the defensive backs go, as far as Aqib Talib, I can't think of anyone else to put there. So, overall, good work. And not only a shout-out to the unanimous selections, but shout-out to the couple guys who made it into 2000s team, guys like Tom Brady, Julius Peppers, and have also made it in 2010's team. That's a pretty amazing accomplishment. So that's pretty cool to see there.